You know, there are some things you see every single day, but you never really see them. The humble mailbox flag is one of those things. It looks so simple, right? Just a little red flag. But believe it or not, it's a total masterpiece of engineering, communication, and social agreement that's just hiding out in plain sight. And its story? Well, it tells us a whole lot about how we solve big problems.
I mean, have you ever really stopped and looked at one and wondered, why is it designed exactly like that? Why is it on that specific side? Why does it move with that certain amount of tension? It turns out none of that is an accident. Every single detail is part of a century-long story about solving a uniquely American problem. And that problem, in a word, was distance. The story of the mailbox flag was literally born from these long driveways, the scattered farmhouses, and the huge challenge of delivering mail across a vast and, well, a still growing nation.
So to really get the solution, you've got to understand the problem. Back in 1863, free city delivery kicked off, which was awesome if you lived in a city. But by the 1890s, something like 2/3 of the whole population lived in rural areas, and they still had to trek all the way to a post office just to get their mail. So in 1896, they started experimenting with something called Rural Free Delivery, or RFD. And as it got bigger and bigger, it created this massive puzzle. How in the world do you service millions of scattered homes without it taking forever?
Okay, so try to put yourself in the mail carrier's shoes back then. Every single driveway could be a stop. Every stop cost them. It meant slamming on the brakes, restarting the engine, all on these terrible, unpaved roads. And for what? Half the time the box was empty? It was a huge waste of time, a huge waste of fuel. And the mailboxes themselves? Oh, they were a complete mess. People were using old lard cans, soap boxes, you name it. It was total chaos and just wildly inefficient.
So, the answer to this huge, nationwide problem wasn't some complex new technology. Nope. It was an elegant, standardized design, a design so incredibly effective that it just became this unspoken part of the American landscape. The change was, well, it was dramatic. Before 1915, you had this random mess of makeshift containers. Then, in 1915, this post office employee named Roy J. Girolamo designed the classic tunnel-shaped mailbox we all recognize today. It was tough, it was weatherproof, and most importantly, it had that little signal flag. But here's the really brilliant part of the strategy. Girolamo and the post office decided not to patent the design. They basically made it open source. By letting any manufacturer make it, they guaranteed it would spread like wildfire and become the national standard. It was a genius move to prevent a chaotic market of competing, incompatible mailboxes. And the flag itself was the real game changer. It instantly turned this passive box for incoming mail into an active, two-way communication device. No more guessing, no more wasted stops. The carrier knew, just at a glance, if there was outgoing mail waiting inside. But the genius doesn't stop there. This little flag is actually governed by a set of super specific rules. They're all laid out in an official document called USPS STD 7C. And trust me, every single rule is there for a very, very practical reason. All right, first up, position. The standard is absolute. The flag has to be on the right side of the box as you're facing it. No exceptions, period. And the reason is just pure ergonomics and safety. Mail carriers drive on the right side of the road, right? So putting the flag on the right side of the box puts it perfectly in their line of sight and makes it super easy to reach and flip down without ever having to fully stop or get out of the car. Consistency is everything when you're doing something hundreds of times a day. Okay, here's another one of those incredibly specific details. A single number that is absolutely critical to the flag's design. 2 pounds. You've probably felt it, but you've never really thought about why it feels just right. So that rule is all about force. The flag needs to be sturdy enough to stay up against wind and road vibrations, but it can't take more than 2 pounds of force to raise or lower it. It's this perfect, delicate balance. Easy enough for a carrier to flip down thousands of times a week without getting tired, but tough enough that a windy gay won't accidentally send a false signal. And this brings us to what is probably the biggest assumption about the mailbox flag. We all picture it as red, don't we? But is that actually a rule? Well, get this. The answer is a big no. In fact, if you look at the official rules, the preferred color according to the USPS is actually fluorescent orange for maximum visibility. What's even crazier is the list of colors you're not allowed to use. Green, brown, white, yellow, and blue are all banned, probably because they just blend in with the scenery too much.
So the only real requirement is that the flag has to be a color that really pops against the mailbox itself. Who knew?
So that's the history, and that's the brilliant design. But what about today? In an age of email and endless package deliveries, the flag's role has kind of evolved, and that brings some new things to think about.
Which leads us to a really important modern question. See, that flag is a public signal that basically shouts, hey, there's mail in here. And while that's great for the postal carrier, it can also be an advertisement for mail thieves.
So here's kind of the modern etiquette for the flag. You should probably skip using it if you're sending anything sensitive, like checks, bill payments, anything with personal info. A raised flag can make your mailbox a target. The much safer alternatives are to drop your mail in one of those big, sturdy blue USPS collection boxes or just take it directly to the post office.
And yet, even with all these new secure locking mailboxes out there, the flag's job still isn't done. According to the USPS, for a mailbox to be considered full service, which means it handles both incoming and outgoing mail, it has to have that carrier's signal flag. Without it, it's just a limited service box for receiving mail. So yeah, the flag is still the official signal for a pickup.
And that really brings us back to this beautiful idea. At its core, the flag is so much more than a piece of plastic or metal. It's a simple, silent agreement. It's a wordless code that turns a plain old box on a post into this vital two-way communication hub, connecting one single home to the entire world.
So the next time you drive by and see that little flag up, you'll know the incredible story of efficiency, ergonomics, and open source thinking behind it. Which kind of makes you wonder, what other design masterpieces are out there, hiding in plain sight, that we've never even noticed?